Hi, this is Dan Heisman, and we're continuing with our series of videos to help you play chess better. One of the things you can help yourself play chess better, one of the ways is to listen to a good player analyze or analyze with a good player. Well, I can't analyze with you, although I am considering having one of my students come on and we'll put them on the loudspeaker and maybe we'll do something together where you can hear both of us. But for the most part, it's just me and you, so in order to pick my brain, you can hear me play against an engine and see how I do. I always put up the caveat that I'm going to be playing too fast for the time limit. This one computer only plays me at 45, but we don't want to make like a 1 hour video. So I play too fast for the time limit to try to get the video done in about half an hour. Sometimes the game goes a little longer than that. Anyway, let's make a challenge here. Set it up. Let me center the board here before we start. Let's move the window a little over. Move it up like so. My clock's running. I have black. He played d4. Usually I like to play a King's Indian against the computer, see what happens. Okay, here we go. Let's offer a King's Indian. I could play g6 first and offer to transpose into a modern. I haven't done that in a in a game like this. So let's try it. We'll try to transpose, see what happens. G6, C4. We'll play D6, maybe transpose, knight C3, bishop G7. All right, we're transposing into a King's Indian. That's the way it goes. F3. Well, we've played some of the queen sack lines. We could offer that again this time. The Bronstein queen sack line is kind of fun. Yeah, C5 is the equalizing move here, but it's tough to play for a win with C5. It's pretty easy to try to get a draw, but I'm going for a win, so let's play E5. All right, queen sack line starts with knight H5. Let's see if he goes in for it. Haven't played one of these in a couple years. Yep, queen H4 check. G3, knight takes G3. Queen F2, knight takes F1. This is all book. Knight takes E3. I think Stockfish 12 likes King F2 here. King E2 is the main book line. King D2 seems to help me win a tempo with knight takes C4 check. I really don't see I could do anything else. Knight to G2. Knight G2, queen just moves somewhere like F2. I can go back to F4. That's pleasant, but winning a pawn with check, it's got to be good. If he plays King D3, I can play knight takes B2 check. I won't get trapped. If he plays King C2, then he can't play rook to C1 to try to skewer my knight to the C7 pawn. After knight takes King E2, if I play knight to A6 to guard the C7 pawn, that's certainly possible. If he plays queen E7, I can play maybe knight B6 or something. All right, so let's play knight takes C4 check. King C1. I've never seen a computer play this kind of line. I might even get something fun going with H5 and bishop H6 check here. But right now I got to finish my development. He can play knight to B5 and threatening knight takes C7. And the only way that I can really guard that square is with knight A6. So developing my knight to A6 to begin with is a reasonable idea. I can bring my other knight back to the center with knight E3, but it's a little early. As I said, H5 is a candidate, F5 is a candidate. If I play knight A6 and he plays queen E7, I can probably play knight B6 and bishop D7, and then play rook A E8 and then F5 with a good game. It looks like knight A6 is the right move here. Bishop D7 first, then queen E7, and then knight B6, and then knight B5, and then knight A6. That looks a little bit more awkward to play it in that move order. I think playing knight A6 first looks right. You can always, not only are you guarding C7, but later on you might be able to bring the knight back into the game with knight c5. If you play c6 right away, again, he could play moves like b3 and then knight b6 and then queen e7, and it's hard to guard the d-pawn in that kind of position because I can't guard it with a rook, I can't guard it with a knight. So c6, b3, knight b6, queen e7 doesn't look right. I think knight a6 is the right move. Let's do that. Okay, let's see what he does. Queen there. Okay, well, I can drive the queen away with h6, but I don't see really why I need to do that yet. If I play bishop d7 and he plays queen e7, I could play either rook d8 or knight to b6. The queen on e7 isn't really doing much now that my knight's on e6. Bishop d7 is a handy-dandy move. Keeps the knight out of b5, connects my rooks, gets me ready to play f5. What else could I play? I could play knight c5, threatening knight d3 check. He can move his king up to c2. I'm pretty happy to leave his king on c1, blocking the rook. I could play knight b4, which is similar, keeping him out of c2. Let's look at that. Knight b4, the king can't move up. His queen can't come back to guard d3. He could play b3. Then I have knight d3 check, king c2, hitting both knights. If I put a knight on b2, he can play rook b1, and that looks kind of awkward. Knight b4, b3, knight d3 check, king c2. I guess I can go back to knight b4 check again, repeats the position. Yeah, I'm not sold on that at the moment. Bishop d7 looks like a good move. What else could I play? I can play f5. I could play f6 followed by f5. The idea of f6 first is to get his queen off of e7. If I play f5, maybe he has queen e7. But if I play f5 and he plays queen e7, I have bishop f6 trapping his queen. f5, bishop, queen e7, bishop f6. Resigns looks good. Okay. So if I play f5, I'm threatening f takes e4. Then if he plays f takes e4, then rook to f1 check, knight d1 looks disastrous. But he doesn't have to do that. So f5 is probably a pretty good move. f6 followed by f5 is good. Bishop d7 looks good. In some of these lines I can play c6, but I don't think I can play it quite yet because of those similar queen e7 ideas. After f6 I can play c6, but I don't really think that's the right idea. I can no longer play h5 and bishop h6 check because I can't guard the h. I can play h5 and then king h7 and then bishop h6 pinning the queen to the king. But he has like 3 moves to get out of that, and meanwhile I'm not so sure I shouldn't just be developing my pieces. I think bishop d7 is the right move. If he plays queen e7, I have a pleasant choice between maybe rook a d8 or knight b6. I don't think that's any danger at all. Let's play bishop d7. All right, so here we are. The queen can get trapped here if I play like f5 and bishop f6 and my bishop is guarded. If I play knight to b6, what do I do if he plays a4? I guess I can play rook a e8, and then he plays queen h4 or queen g5, and I'm good. I can play f5. It's really between rook a d8 and knight to b6. Rook a d8, not the greatest square for the rook. Doesn't tie down my knight. My knight on c4. Could go to other squares. I could start with a bishop check first. Let's take a look at that. Bishop h6 check. If he plays king to c2, then knight to b4 check, then king to b3 is pretty much forced. And now he's hitting both my knights. That doesn't look good. Bishop h6 check, king c2, knight e3 check. I don't know, king to b3 or something. Well, if he plays king b3, I can play bishop h6 check. If king c2, knight e3 check. He can't go to the dark squares. I have knight takes d5 check, winning the queen. If he plays king to b3, I can play knight c5 check. And then he plays king to a3, and then I have knight c4 again, check, and then he has king b4. And he's hitting my knight, and he's hitting, well, my bishop is guarded. Pretty interesting. Bishop h6 check first. Is there any reason not to do that? King c2, knight e3 check. If he plays bishop h6 check, king to b1, I have knight to b4. And if he plays queen takes d7, I have knight d2 check, king to c1. And then I have a discovered check, but knight b3 check, king b1. Knight takes a1 and gives up 2 pieces for a rook. I could play bishop h6 check, and depending on what he does, I could then play rook a d8 and leave my knight in the attack. Or I could play knight e3 check, followed by rook a d8, and then knight c5. That doesn't look too bad. I am getting my bishop on a better square with check, and I don't want his king up there, but the king on c2, I might be... See, if I play king c2, knight e3 check, king d3, I get my knight to c5 with check, which can't be bad. And in some lines I can play maybe rook a d8 and then f6 and then rook f7, threatening to trap the queen. In fact, right now, can I play f6, queen takes d7, and then trap the queen with rook f7? No, because he has queen to b5 or a4. But I might be able to do that if my knight is on c5 with check. Then I could play f6 and his queen is trapped. All right, I think that works. All right, so I don't see anything wrong with playing bishop h6 check first. Let's do that. Later on, if he moves queen h4, I can always play king g7 or bishop f4 or something. So let's check him first, see what he does. Okay, king c2. So now my idea was to play knight to e3 check. And if he plays king to b1, I can play rook a d8. If he plays king somewhere else, I could play knight c5 check. I think that's okay. Knight e3, king b1. Knight e3, king b1. Knight e3 check, king b1. He has to play king b1. I don't think he can let me get my knight to c5 with check. Knight e3 check, king b1. Is that really helping me? King b1. Knight e3 check, king b1. How does that help me? I'm not so convinced it does anymore. Knight b4 check, king b3. Hits both my knights. That can't be good. I don't think I'm mating him. Knight d2 check, king takes b4, a5 check, king a6 doesn't look that promising. Maybe the threat's better than the execution here. Maybe I shouldn't play knight e3 check quite so fast. Maybe I should just play rook e d8, threatening f6 and then rook f7, trapping the queen. If he plays queen h4, then maybe knight e3 check, or maybe just bishop f4, although on bishop f4 he's got knight e2. But I can't trap the queen yet until I play rook a d8. So knight e3 check, king b1 is not convincing. I can't get my bishop on d7 into the attack. The knight on c3 is guarding the queenside white squares. I can't trap the queen after he takes the bishop because he can always get out to a4 or something. All right, I'm going to play rook a d8. If he plays knight b5, I have bishop takes b5. That's not a problem. I'm threatening to trap the queen with f6. I also have some knight checks I can play now that my bishop's guarded. All right, let's do that. Rook a d8. All right, knight e2. That keeps the bishop out of f4. It gives the king another square to go to on c3. But now the idea is to play something like f6 and then rook f7 and trap the queen. He can never go to e6. He can't take anything. My rook is not guarded on d8, so I do have to, after f6, I have to play maybe knight b6 and then rook d8 because the rook's not guarded. I don't see a better way to guard it. Yeah, f6 trapping the queen first looks awfully good. I'm threatening knight b6 and rook f7. I'm not sure how he can stop that. In any case, it can't be that bad to play f6. He can't get another piece down there near the queen. It stops his knight from going to h6 and f5, g5. Yeah, I kind of like that. Let's play f6. Rook b1. All right. So my plan is knight b6 followed by rook d8 hitting the queen. Right now I can't play rook d8 because he has queen takes d7, so I need to guard the bishop. I could also move the bishop and then hit the queen, but I'm not sure there's any great squares to do that with. I think just playing knight b6 is safe. If I win the queen for a rook, then I'm up like 2 pieces for a rook plus 2 pawns, which is a kill. I don't see after knight b6 how he stops either rook from going to e8. Well, I can't play rook fe8 because queen takes f6, but rook de8 is the threat. I don't see any way he can stop that. Knight b6, he makes any move, rook de8. And I think I have the queen trapped. All right, when you see a move that seems to win, you don't play it right away, you check it again. I could try to attack his king with knight e3 check. But there's several ways to win the game. I can attack the king. I can trap the queen. I think trapping the queen looks like the right idea. Knight b6. He makes a move. I play rook on d to e8. My knight's guarding my bishop. My d pawn is guarded. My e pawn is guarded. My f pawn is guarded. My rooks are guarded. Yeah, okay, let's do it. Knight b6. f4. Now he's desperate. Okay, well, I could take that pawn first and then try to trap the queen, but let's just trap the queen first. So we're looking at rook d e8, trapping the queen. Rook f7 fails to queen takes d8 check. Knight c8, does that trap the queen? All right, so knight c8 also traps the queen, but why bring my knight back? He's just going to take off a rook anyway. My knight on b6 is guarding c4. If I play it back to c8 and he takes a rook, I just have to reposition the knight. It's not bad. Knight to c8 looks good. I think the two moves that win the queen are knight to c8 and rook on d to e8. Rook on d to e8 just looks a little bit better. Yeah. Let's do it. Rook on d to e8. Queen takes f8. All right, which one wants to take? If I take with the king, I'm threatening to take on f4. My rook has a discovered attack on the e4 square. If I take with the rook and he takes the pawn, I can take back and bring my rook on the f file. Those are both good. I don't think that makes a big deal of difference. He's going to take my pawn. If I take back, I'm threatening rook f2. If I take with the king and he takes, I could take with the rook. Then he guards the e-pawn, and then I break with f5, and I'm probably winning the pawn. Yeah, let's take with the king. King takes f8. Okay, takes the pawn. My plan was to take with the rook. Then he plays either knight g3. If he plays knight g3, I could play f5 anyway. Knight g3, I could play knight c5, hitting the pawn. I could pile up on the pawn. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it makes much difference. Knight c4 followed by knight e3 check. Let's take with the rook. Can't be too bad. Attacks my pawn. Probably want the king in the middle. King e7. Blocks in the rook. King g7 blocks in the bishop. Blocking in the bishop's no big deal. King f7 leaves me in the pin. Doesn't really matter. Just on general principles, king e7 looks right. If he plays knight g3, I play knight c4, threatening to fork him. Or maybe knight c5 first. Could move the bishop out then. Could play bishop to b5, pinning the knight to the rook. Yeah, all right, let's play king to e7. King e7, knight f3, rook takes e4, knight g5 check. I just take him. All right, king e7. Knight g3 as expected. I think knight c5 first. If he plays b4, I have knight takes e4. If he doesn't, I could play a5 and then knight c4 or something like that. If he plays knight f3, is he trapping my rook? Ooh, maybe I don't want the king. Maybe I don't want the king there. Knight f3. Really don't want him to play knight f3, do I? Bishop b5 first. Knight c5. Knight f3. Yeah, it's a little awkward. Yeah, probably I moved the king to the wrong square. I don't think I'm in any trouble. I can always play bishop g4. Yeah. I could play bishop b5 here. He would play rook f2. I could play knight c4, threatening knight e3 check. If he plays knight f3, I have knight e3 check, trading off. Knight c4, knight f3, knight e4. He could play king c3. Knight c4, king c3. Hitting the knight, knight e3. Yeah, I probably should tuck my king back on f7. If he ever plays knight g5 check, I can play bishop takes g5, and that just gives me a place to put my rook. If he plays knight d4, I'm okay. Yeah, it's unfortunate I have to let him develop his pieces a little bit. Bishop b5 isn't bad, knight c4 is not bad, king f7 is not bad. Knight b4 check is a move. Doesn't look like I'm doing that much. King b3 or something. Knight c5, knight f3. I really don't have any places to put the rook. All right, put the king on the wrong square. Let's admit my mistake. King f7. I can always bring my bishop back. King f7. There's that knight f3. Knight g5 check is not a threat yet. Let's just play rook to e8 maybe, or rook to e7. Does it matter? I don't think it matters that much. Rook to... let's play rook to e8. Rook e8. Rook over. Okay, knight c5 threatens to win the pawn. Maybe I could play bishop g4 and remove the guard. Knight c4 threatens knight e3 check. I could also play knight e5, knight takes e5. I could play bishop to b5. Bishop b5. Rook to e1. Knight to b4 check. King to b3. I don't know. It seems like before I do that, I want to... If I play knight c4 first, threatening knight e3, then can I play b5 and then knight c5? I should have something there. Knight c4 can also go into e5. I don't know. Knight c5 first, hitting the e-pawn. He plays rook e1. Gets his rook off the line with my king. That's nice to see. All right, let's do that. Knight c5, get that knight in the game. Okay, now he's not threatening any more knight g5s or anything. Knight c4 is a move. I could play a5 to solidify my knight first. a5 looks pretty good. So he can't play b4. I think I'm going to play a5. Just looks like the right idea. Maybe a better move, but that should be plenty good. a5, he brings his knight back, keeps my knight out of c4, overprotects his pawn. Okay, I could play bishop b5 and then knight c4 and trade knights. That can't be bad. Bishop on b5 is a good square. I'm also threatening bishop d3 check in some lines. If he plays b3, I'm okay. Is there any reason not to do that? I don't really see any. Then I could also play knight d7. If I can't play knight c4, I can play knight d7 and knight e5. That looks good. All right, let's play bishop to b5. All right, he's offering a trade. I could pin the knight with bishop a4. I can just trade. I'm winning. Trading when you're winning is good. Bishop a4, I can double his pawns, but I'm not sure why that means anything in this position. I can play bishop d3 check first. Where would he go? Bishop d3 check, he can't. If he plays king to c3, can I mate him? Knight to a4 check, king to d4. I don't think so. It's close though. Bishop d3 check, king c3. Knight on 6 to a4 check, king to d4. That might be a mating net, but not really necessary. All right, so we're looking at knight takes b3 here. If he plays king takes b3, I can still play a move like knight c4. All right, let's just do that. Let's just trade. We're winning. Knight takes b3. King takes. I could play a4 check. I don't see why I'd want to do that. Bishop c4 check. If he plays king a3, I could play bishop d2, threatening bishop to b4 checkmate. That's cute. If he plays king c2, if I play bishop takes a2, he can trap my bishop with b3. Then I can play a4, get my bishop out. Bishop c4 check, king to c2, bishop takes a2. He could skewer my bishop and my pawn with rook a1. I'm not all that convinced. Well, could play bishop d2 first, get his rook off of my pawn, and then check him. Let's take a look at that. Bishop d2, rook moves, bishop a4 check. He has to play, wow, bishop d2, rook moves, bishop a4 check, king a3, bishop b4 checkmate. Wow. That means on bishop to d2, he can't move the rook. Because if he moves the rook, I checkmate him with bishop to a4 check and bishop b4 mate, which I'm threatening anyway. So he just has to move the king, and I just take off the rook. All right, well, guess that's a good move. Let's try it. Bishop d2. Yeah, he saw the mate. Well, now I'm taking the rook, and if he takes back, I can play knight takes d5 because the rook is pinned. The pawn is pinned to the rook. He doesn't have any rook tempo moves. All right, bishop takes, rook takes. I think knight takes d5. Starting to wrap things up. His rook is not guarded. When you see a good move, look for a better one. Bishop d3 check, no. Knight c4, no. No, 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 no. All right, knight takes d5. If he plays rook d1, skewering my knight and the pawn's guarded. Okay. Knight takes d5. a3. Okay. Well, where do we go next? I could play f5. Trade some more. If I play f5, he plays something, and then I play knight f6, and I keep hitting the pawn. Can't be too bad. f5, if he takes the pawn and I take his rook, he doesn't have anything. If I play f5, he takes my knight, I take the rook. All right, let's play f5. f5. King guards the rook. All right, so now if I play knight f6 and he plays e takes f5 and I play rook takes rook and he plays pawn takes pawn check, I lose a pawn, but I trade off the rooks and I'm up a piece in the endgame. So that's good. What else could I do? What else could I do? I could play f4 and hit his knight. If he takes my knight, I trade rooks and then I take his knight, and that's really, really easy. If he moves the knight, then I can play knight f6 and hit his pawn. That looks pretty good. So if I play f4, suppose he plays rook f1, I play bishop takes f1. So he can't pin the pawn. f4. If he takes my knight, I take the rook, he takes back with the king, I take his knight. That's curtains. I think f4 is pretty good. If he plays knight e2, I have rook takes e4. If he plays knight f1, I have, if nothing else, knight f6. All right, I'm pretty convinced that f4 is good here. Let's play f4. He takes. All right, let's trade everything off. Rook takes e1. Pawn takes the knight. All right, let's win that pawn on d5 before I do anything else. Bishop c4. Take off the pawn. Bring the king up. Brings his king back. Keep bringing the king up. Okay, create a passed pawn on the H file. G5. Keep bringing the king up. It doesn't matter whether I trade or not. I'll just trade. All right, let's create another passed pawn on that side of the board. Okay, he's going that way. We'll push the pawns on the other side. Keep pushing him on that side. Okay, I could win the pawn, but I'll just get a passed pawn. Whichever way he goes, I go the other way. Now he realizes I'm getting a queen. Well, he realized that before. Okay, we get a queen. All right, so we'll start to cut him off. We'll play, I don't know. I don't want him to go up to b5, so maybe queen to e8, queen to e1, king to a3, queen to a5 check. Yeah, let's just do that. Queen here. Queen check. Queen check again. Queen check again. All right. That was a cute mate. All right, so that was the Queen Bronstein's queen sacrifice line in the King's Indian. And if the computer plays it perfectly, I don't think grandmasters like to play this anymore for black. I think the computer found some nice lines for white, but of course, Beth O has less than half the rating of like Stockfish 12, so I've played Beth O in this line before. It's been several years. I don't know if I've done it before on my YouTube channel or not. I did it on the ICC a couple times. And it always gets to be an interesting game on, I get all that piece play against white's undeveloped pieces. And of course, with Beth O not playing the optimal moves, it gives me a chance to get a lot of tactics and have a lot of fun. All right, 37 minutes. That's more than enough for a video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. More importantly, tell your friends about my channel, Dan Heisman Chess. And if you like, hit the subscribe button. Thanks a lot. See you next time. Bye.